A third successive night of attacks on Ukrainian port cities on the Black Sea, with Mykolaiv now being included. Mykolaiv was never included in the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Early optimistic predictions were that the initiative would be expanded to include that city. Instead, things went in the other direction, with Russia pulling out of the initiative 3 days ago. Nevertheless, it would appear that Russia wants to destroy Ukrainian port infrastructure wherever it can find it. That's the interpretation anyway that's being put on this strike on Mykolaiv overnight. The regional governor says that in addition to 9 wounded, there are dead, but he hasn't said how many there are. In Odessa, it appears that the surface-to-air missiles, the air defences, worked a little bit better or had more success last night than the previous night. There is some damage in the city in Odessa, but not the same kind of damage to the port areas and grain stocks that we saw in Odessa and neighbouring Chornomorsk the previous night. The interpretation of Ukrainians of these actions by Russia is that it is Vladimir Putin wanting to send a clear signal that Ukraine should not call Russia's bluff, as Volodymyr Zelensky suggested, and go it alone, exporting grain via the Black Sea without Russian security guarantees. And the Ukrainians are accusing the Russians of hunger, blackmail, of even effectively declaring war. That was what one deputy prime minister said, on countries that depend on Ukrainian grain. I mean, that's perhaps hyperbole to a certain extent, but this has already sent grain prices around the world shooting up and increased general food insecurity, because with Russia bombing its ports and making it clear that it will not tolerate ships travelling through the Black Sea, unless the Ukrainians and the Turks want to very, very boldly call Russia's bluff and send the ships anyway without insurance and with these threats from Russia, it seems pretty clear that Ukraine's not going to be able to export its agricultural produce via the Black Sea, and it simply doesn't have the capacity to export it in the same quantities over land.
Now, meanwhile, Gulliver, you're in the northeast because there are fears that even as Ukraine's counteroffensive continues, Russia could be launching a major counteroffensive of its own in the Kharkiv region. Tell us more about that.
Yes, so there's a town in the Kharkiv region, Kupiansk, to the east of Kharkiv, which was liberated from after several months of Russian occupation in September last year, and has kind of been in the Russian sights ever since then, with the Russians trying to take it back. The front line is currently about 8 kilometers to the east of Kupiansk. I went there yesterday. You can see the artillery battles going on. The town itself has been struck daily, local officials told me, for the last few days. It was struck after I left, actually, yesterday, and the Ukrainians had been saying that the Russians have amassed a force of 100 to 120,000 men in these areas to the east of Kupiansk, and also to the south. There's a town in Donetsk region called Liman that the Russians are also trying to counterattack and take back. But yesterday, Ukraine's deputy defense minister did say that Ukraine had regained the initiative in the Kupiansk area, and although the Russians had managed to advance by about a kilometer, the Ukrainians are saying for the moment that they've got things back under control.